Kayak Fishing Obsessed podcast. We'll be sitting down with a fresh guest each week. Someone who shares the same kayak fishing passion that runs through our veins. We're talking kayak anglers, kayak companies, lure experts. Heck, anyone who's got a story to tell about landing the big ones from a kayak. We're setting our sights on becoming the #1 kayak fishing podcast in the world. You'll get a chuckle, a grin, and hey, maybe even a belly laugh. Because we believe in the power of humor. But above all, we're here to educate and inspire. So, whether you're a seasoned kayak angler or just dipping your toes into this exhilarating world, join us on the Kayak Fishing Obsessed podcast. It's time to reel in adventure, camaraderie, and the joy of the catch. Here's your host, Daren Wendell.
Welcome, you fish freaks. Welcome to episode number 66 of the KFO show, brought to you by the Wendell Fishing YouTube channel. 1,200 videos. I got daily shorts, daily community posts, a weekly, well, kind of bi-weekly now. I kind of throttled it back during the fishing season. Podcast and 1 or 2 videos a week going out the door. So I'm pretty excited about the things that I have kind of queued up. And so if you are listening in from Spotify or Google or Apple or wherever you're listening in from, if you haven't checked out Wendell Fishing YouTube channel, love to have you join us over there. If YouTube's not your thing, Facebook is. Guys, in February, I started a page called Kayak Fishing Freaks. And tomorrow, I believe we will hit 10,000 members. And so that has grown like a freaking weed recently, and it's been a lot of fun. So head over there, Kayak Fishing Freaks. I'd love to see you there. All right, now let's take a look at the Knucklehead Challenge. For those of you on Team Wendell, let me present my screen here. Let's take a look and see who is leading the way on this. All right, so on my team, man, we're up against Fluke Master, Chad Hoover, Rudd. There's like 10 different teams out there. But we've got 35 anglers, 352 fish posted so far this month. And so let's take a look and see who is performing. All right, top 5. That's how we do this. If you're new to kayak fishing, 5 fish, and we do it by length. So Seth Taylor down in Florida is absolutely putting up some donkeys. 24.5 inch. Let me take a look at that one. Jeez. He's got a 23 inch, 20.5, 19.25, and 18.75. Puts him at first, 106 inches total. Behind him, John Long. Got a 22.25, 20.5, 20, 19.75, another 19.75. Hailing in from Virginia. And I'm currently bringing up third here, 99 inches. Got a 20.75, 20.5, 19.75, 19.25, and 18.75. So hard to come by. I haven't been able to get an upgrade recently, but I can't win anything on my team. I'm already on the team. So it's really between Seth and John. Coming in fourth to Josh Reynolds. So it's a big bummer because he had a 24 that got DQ'd. So he would be in the running there, but it's fun. Still a lot of time left. And in fact, I'm going on a fishing trip from Thursday all the way through the end of the month. So maybe I can take back a place or two just for fun. I'm also doing the state challenge, which I'm also in third, and you don't get a payout unless you're in second. So I definitely got some work to do. All right, guys. Well, welcome to the show. I have an interactive show for you tonight. So remember, if you're listening in, feel free to make a comment or ask questions to the guest tonight. The podcast, we're going to be covering 3 things. We're going to help you improve your catch rate, specifically around establishing fishing patterns. And then we're going to talk one of my favorite things, fishing jigs. And we might, if we have time, talk about finesse fishing. Man, I rented these lips. Can't talk today. All right. Well, I'd like to welcome our guest to the show. This is Sean from Real Northern Bass. Welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me. I'm doing as well as I can be. How about you?
Oh, well as you can. It sounds like you had a rough day. That's what it sounds like.
It's been hectic. I've been a little bit of work travel, a little bit of vacation time. I am swamped, so been working late, a lot of long hours. Kids at the friggin' urgent care right now for poison ivy.
Oh, no.
So
all right, poison ivy. Okay.
Yeah, it just never ends.
I love it. Oh, look, people are already chiming in. Richard Souza, 603 is legit. You changed your name, I believe. We'll talk about that in a second.
I did, yeah.
Dudes have them dialed in. Yes.
Maybe not so much this year, but most other years, yeah.
What are you talking about? You just put up a smallmouth that had me drooling.
Dude, I tell you though, I 100% loved that trip. Those 4 days were magical. And I'm really happy my buddy went out and scouted for us. So he did a lot of the work ahead of time. So we were able to make the most of what he had already found.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, you take out those 4 magical days that I had up there in the Great Lakes, and I've had an abysmal year this year.
Really?
Yeah, it's been tough. Like, abysmal by my obscenely unhealthy standards that I set for myself. I will add that caveat because my dad was giving me crap. He's like, come on, you've caught more 4-pounders this year than I've caught in the last 20 years. I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's still a down year for me.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? We're our own worst enemy when it comes to that. Because for all intents and purposes, if you check out your pages, you're slaying them. But you're right, your competition is yourself. So
truth,
I get it. So let's talk about it real quick. So real northern bass didn't always used to be called real northern bass, correct?
No, it did not.
All right, walk us through that and kind of walk us through why you got started and kind of what it is that you do, kind of bringing everyone up to speed.
Okay, I've told the story 1,000 times, and I'm getting better at being quicker with it, more concise. So my best friend Chris and I, who I've known since I'm 39 now, he's the first friend I made when I was 8 years old, when I moved from Massachusetts to New Hampshire. And at one point, we graduated college. We were adults with money, no kids yet. We're like, okay, cool. Now we can do all the fun stuff we wanted to do. We were playing a lot of Call of Duty, and we're like, we should start a gaming channel. Like, that'd be funny. And because we were like ridiculously good at search and destroy on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. We were in like top 1% for a long while.
Were you sponsored?
Nope. Just enjoyed playing the hell out of the game, and we were just up there. And we didn't know anything about anything. We just like worked our asses off all week, or like play video games. We got good at it. And we had this idea, and it just kind of turned to into just talking about gaming from kind of the same way that I talk about fishing. And that did really, really well for the 3.5 years we did it together. And he stepped away early 2012 right after Battlefield 4 launched because he was miserable. He's like, I'm just done with this. And now at this point, we both had our first kid. And I stuck it out for a little bit longer, started a gaming website with a friend, this like kind of community-backed platform for like gaming news. Okay. And it was going crazy. Like, we made a lot of money. It was awesome. And then I just got burnt out in the scene. And like 6 months, I stepped down from that and walked away from it all like middle towards end of 2013. In 2014, I had a job change that made my life absolutely miserable. Oh. And within the same company, I've been there for 10 years. At this point, that was year 7. And like 6 months in, my wife just came home with a GoPro. She's like, you're effing miserable. You need to do something like that is just creative. I don't care what you do. Here's a GoPro, have fun. And that's what got it all started. And I was still heavily learning a lot about fishing.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, well, what do I do with this? I know I can edit, but I don't know what I'm going to do. I had one GoPro. I didn't have any good audio yet. So my wife's like, well, just do like cast to catch or something. So that's what I started with. And then I came back to like, I want to share the things I've learned because there's not a lot of content that was covering New England when I got started at the time.
Right.
I didn't know, there was only a handful of things that I was like, you know what? I know I can speak to this really, really well. And I can share a lot of really helpful information specific to this region. Yep. So it started out really slow. And when I started the channel, I was like, I got to have a name. I don't know what the hell to do. My New Hampshire pride is very strong. So 603 bass, whatever. Keep it simple. There's everything you can.
That
doesn't matter.
Is that what it is? All right.
Yeah, New Hampshire's area code. The entire state is 603.
Really? All right.
Yep. So I just played on that. And it's like everybody does that. Every business in the state. There's like 1,000 different 603 themed things. And I never put any thought into it beyond that. I was like, I just need a name to call it something. Mm-hmm. And it has evolved into what it is today. And at one point, about 1.5 years before I made the change, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should change it. Because I loved like that original 603, which I don't have it anywhere that I can easily show it. But it was just the outline of the state. And I cut out the 603 in the middle. And I was like, yeah, that works. I put a little smallmouth in the middle of the 0. And it kind of dawned upon me. I came up behind somebody that had my decal. I was like, I like that, but if you don't know what that is already, you would not know what it is. Like, yeah, you can't see that.
Didn't know till just now. So
yeah, no, it has it's honestly like a terrible logo because again, if you don't already know it means 603 bass, you have no idea what the hell that is.
Right.
And this thing was starting to do like, I don't know, it was just starting to grow. I was like, yeah, maybe I should change it. And I talked it over, and my buddy was like, you should call it Real Northern Bass because you're doing Real Northern Bass Talk. So thought about it, and then I kind of created the new logo. I had my friend really help me out with it a lot. And I was like, you know what, that works because I still want to play into the northern aspect of what I do. I fish all over New England or the greater Northeast, really. And I want to kind of keep it geared towards that. And so Real Northern Bass just kind of stuck. I was like, you know what, that works. I sat on it for a year. I registered the business and everything with the state at like in December of 2021. Yeah, because I changed it over January 1st or 2nd, 2023 is when I made it official on everything.
All right.
I sat on it for a year because I was like, is this dumb? Does it really matter? And then I was like, you know what? If I don't change it, I'm going to look back on this in a couple of years, regardless of where I'm at, and I'm going to think, as much as I am having fun with it, there's still that competitive aspect behind me of like, well, what if I like really tried to put in all the effort and time that I can? Like, what can happen? So with that, like, okay, well, that means I have to try on everything. So let's change the name to make it more sense. Because then at least when you see the name, it makes sense. Like you see Real Northern Bass, okay, it's got to be bass fishing related. Like, sure enough. And I mean, that was the gist of it. It was just kind of this, like, still kind of in this weird half. I don't know how to explain it. I'm like half in and half out with it because my career has always been on this upward trajectory and it's been great. Yeah. But that is also not the direction I was trying to go. I was actually trying to keep it steady state. And I don't know. There's 1,000 different things I could say about what's happening there that's making this entirely difficult. Now I'm at a stage like, damn, I don't even know if I can do this anymore.
Oh, really? So your job's kind of got to the point where you're bandwidth out.
Yeah. I've already had to miss a fishing expo, which really, really sucked. And that was in my home state. So that was a tough one. Some other things came up. I'm going to miss. I agonized for months over my tournament schedule this year. I've been dying to get back into like a regular tournament schedule.
Right. What do you do for a living? Do you mind sharing?
Sales engineer. So I was a mechanical engineer, specifically in new product development most of my career.
Okay.
And for about 3.5 years as an engineering manager.
Yeah.
That was tough with 2 young kids. My wife works evenings. So that was like, okay, I can't do this. This is too demanding. And then my buddy, one of my really good fishing friends, and just a good friend in general, is like, you have a knack for explaining things. You should get into sales. So what the hell? I'll give it a shot. And that's what I've been doing the last few years. So
yeah, it could be lucrative if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and having that technical aptitude in that background, being able to understand how things work and how things can work, and I guess having a gift for being able to speak better than most, which I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job of showcasing right now, but everybody tells me that I'm really good with my communication. So I was like, well, whatever, I'll give it a shot. It has gone really well, but man, it's just demanding.
Yeah.
Everybody tells me it's because I'm good at what I do. I don't know. I have nothing but self-doubt.
I hear you there. So, all right. So my brother's a mechanical engineer, so I kind of know how your brain works.
Yeah.
And I haven't followed you until we started like talking. So I started following. Of course, I'm checking out your research. So what I love about mechanical engineering mind is that you pick apart everything. So just knowing information is not good enough. You got to know why that information, know the logic behind it. And if you apply that to bass fishing, this makes sense now when I asked you what's some of your core competencies and you shared with me being able to pattern bass, because knowing all of those dynamics makes sense with why you would be good at it as a mechanical engineer. So let that be, let's make that our segue here. Well, really quick, let's talk about, you caught a 7.5 pound smallmouth on Lake Ontario.
I did.
That is 1 pound, less than a pound off the state record.
Yeah, dude. And it's funny because I went up with my buddy. He's Smallmouth Freaks on Instagram. My buddy's name's Tom. Wicked nice guy. He's been fishing up there for 20 years. And I wasn't even supposed to be there at that point.
That's a donkey. I'm sure.
Because I was up for a work trip visiting my customer. We're getting ready for a product launch here shortly. And, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make time to be up here anyway. So screw it. I'm gonna take a few days off. Tuesday of that week, I was on Lake Erie with a subscriber. It went great. Broke my PB. It literally took, I was like, I have to be off the water by 7 p.m., the latest, because I have to do an after-trip report for my boss.
Okay.
Which took me till midnight by the time I got back. 6:46, I caught a 5.76.
All right.
I was like, okay, fine. Broke my PB by like 0.3 pounds. I'm happy. And then Wednesday, I was supposed to go out with my buddy on Lake Erie. We were launched out of Buffalo. Didn't make it 300 feet past the seawall, and we had water come over the top of his lund to 2075. I was like, he looked at me, he was like, "Is this dumb?" Yeah, this is dumb. We gotta turn around.
I love fishing, but this is stupid.
Yeah, and it's a big lund, it's a 21 footer, but it's a lot higher. So we're him and Han. We got out the ramp at 5 trying to beat the wind, and we still couldn't do it. He's like, "Well, what do we do?" I was like, "Well, we can do this. He's like, "You know what? No, I don't want to do any of that. I'm just gonna go back to work." Screw it. Called Tom. What time are you gonna be at the lake? Be there at 12. It's like, I'll be there at 12:45. Ran up, pulled in, grabbed 8 rods in my tackle bag, threw it in his boat, left the GoPros behind. I'm like, don't even want to deal with it. It's going to rain anyway. We got out and pulled up to the first spot. He had just barely put the trolling motor down. I cast out, and 10 seconds later, I caught that 7-pound 5S.
Wow.
If I had taken the time to do literally anything else, set up the GoPros, retied something, I don't think that fish would have been there. Like that was meant to happen.
How deep were you there?
Dude, that thing was in like 6 feet of water.
That's all you're in right now? 6 feet in the background?
Yeah. It doesn't look it because we're close to the bank, but the boat was tilted out towards the middle of the river. That's pretty close to the mouth of the St. Lawrence going into Lake Ontario.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. Smoke 74. It's a football. Come on, Susquehanna. All right, I like it. Is that a Beast Coast jig? Wearing the Beast Coast hat?
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
That's all I fish. The only time I don't fish them is when I need like a very specific color and he's completely out of stock and everybody else is everywhere else. Then I'll go buy something in a pinch. But otherwise, that's all I fish is Beast Coast. That guy has earned my business through and through.
Right on. I was throwing it this morning for work.
Oh yeah. Which one?
Oh, it was one of their discontinueds, but it's their 3/8 ounce. I don't know. It was all black, and I have some muddy bottom up here. Ooh. I didn't have that luck. That's for sure. But sharp and solid. I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure if I will purchase other jigs after the feel and how those things are made. Those are just solid. I'm trying to get them on the show. I've been in back and forth with them. Of course, they're a popular growing brand, so it's hard to get their time right now because they're just fulfilling orders nonstop.
Yeah, Derek. Well, so Derek is the name of the owner. They just moved facilities too, and this is like his 3rd move in the last 4 years, which is phenomenal. Like if that doesn't tell you how good he's doing, I don't know what else to tell you. And he's just an awesome dude. I really hope that you two can make it work. I'll shoot him a text, be like, dude, get on the show. Come on.
I love it.
He's awesome.
I'll get him on here. There's no real limit. There might be a downtime during winter. We'll see what happens. All right, let's talk about patterning bass, right? So obviously refers to just a repetitive behavior of fish during a specific period affected by a set of circumstances. So that's what we'll be talking about. So we have to be considering the seasons from winter to fall to bass behavior, from migrations to feedings, all that stuff, weather conditions, characteristics of fishing spots, bait types, and techniques. And you got to bring that all together to get one bite.
Yep.
And so tell me what goes through your mind, right? Walk us through your mental psyche. What are you thinking when you hit a new body of water? And geek out on us.
So there's 2 things I always keep in mind every time I go out. And the thing that drives me as an angler, and it's my favorite saying, and I forget how many years ago I came up with it, but fishing is like playing a game of chess against the bass, and they change the rules every day. And that has been by far the most important attitude and perspective for me to have because it keeps me sharp and it keeps me on my toes. And second to that, I only get to fish once a week on average. I get Sundays. That's it. So it's really hard to put something together, especially living in the Northeast, because the only stagnance you get is in the middle of the summer for like 2 months when the water's 80 plus, and middle of winter when it's frozen. So it's just this constant peaks and valleys of where you're going through with water temp changes and conditions changing. And, some years we have droughts, some years we get a shit ton of rain. It's hard to find a balance of that because we just lack consistency, especially the last 6 seasons. So I really go into it with as open mind as possible. And the only thing I have to go off of is what I did last week.
Right.
And at least I know roughly what the water temp's going to be. And I always pay attention to the weather all week. If there's in steady state, we trending up, trending down, whatever the case. The last 2 or 3 days before I go fishing, I always pay attention to the wind. Because usually by like Wednesday or Thursday, I have a pretty good idea as to where I want to go. And anything within 3.5 hours of my house is fair game. I'll do that for a day trip all the time. Champlain,
Look at
favorite
you.
launch is about 3.5 hours from my house. And I'll leave my house at 2:30 in the morning and usually won't get back till like 10 o'clock at night.
That's commitment, man.
Dude, totally worth it. Once you fish Champlain, you won't want to fish anywhere else. That place is magical.
All right.
But so I have at least water temp to go off of, and then a lot of history. And if it's a place I've never been to, I'll at least go online and I will look at like Google Earth and I'll try to get an idea as to what the vegetation development looks like. Because you can go back in time if you look at Google Earth on your desktop. Like you download it and you use it on your computer. You don't go online. And you go back in time and see satellite imagery at different times of the year, which is good because you can see open water in a bunch of places in April and then May and usually in like July or August. So you can, like, if you specifically want to go look for largemouth, then I can go look and see, oh, okay, well, now we can see what isn't vegetation at different times of the year and what's like really crowded with stuff.
Yeah.
So I kind of use all those tools at my disposal and then a lot of history coupled with trying to be as diverse as possible. I'm going to go finesse. I'm going to go something heavy. I'm going to go bottom, mid, and top. And top, I haven't really done really well in the last few years, which is okay because usually everything else covers me pretty well.
Right.
And I try to keep an open mind. I can live and die by a jig from ice out to ice in. I literally catch a fish on a jig all year. There's rarely a time I go out where I don't catch a fish on a jig, whether it's 35-degree waters or 90. Doesn't matter. I can make it work. So I always have a jig tied on, and I usually have a couple different ones depending upon what kind of structure I'm fishing. And from there, I kind of just let the fish tell me what it is that they want. If like right now, most of New England is in a spawn, post-spawn, or like heavy post-spawn kind of conditions right now.
Yeah.
And that's good enough for me to know. So now water temps are low to mid 70s in a lot of places for smaller bodies of water, little kettle ponds. That's enough for me to go off of. And I know
Same
that
here in Ohio. I like it.
yeah, really, really tiny body of water, you know, is going to be like just pure post-spawn. And at this point now, Father's Day has always been kind of my measuring stick for about when the bluegill spawn. Mm-hmm. So you get all the largies that get up on their beds and they come off, and then they're kind of just feeding on everything. And then all the bluegill or sunfish, bream, whatever you call them, they all push up and they start going in their pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, and all the bass are just sitting up there tight. So I know my highest probability of success right now are shallow flats, especially areas where I know that bluegill are going to be spawning or in that area.
Yep.
And I'm going to be power fishing because it's that perfect culmination of every potential opportunity at its highest potential for this time of the year. All the bluegill are going to be there really soon. The largemouth just got done and they are feasting to recover. So take advantage of that. And then you got your fry garters too.
Yep.
And those things will go apeshit over anything topwater you throw at them, whether it's a frog or a plopper or whatever. So like it's all of that, right? It's so hard for me to say like, oh yeah, you just do 1, 2, 3. It's not quite that easy for me, but that's my engineering brain, the way it works. I have to look at everything, and then I want to cover everything, and then you have to take their moods into account. Some days they want a meal, so I'm going to throw them a 3/4 ounce football with a full cut skirt, you know, and a 4-inch trailer on the back, and then I will follow that up with a shaky head that's got a 4.5-inch worm in the back and a 3/16 ounce weight, something super finesse, and I'll go. Based on everything I know, I can look at a map like, okay, spots 1, 2, or 3 are one of those is going to hit. And I'll just go to the first spot. I'll run my jig through. I'll run my shaky head through. I'll run a spinnerbait or a jackhammer, or what I really like this time of the year. We can talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about it now since you're there.
All right. Is a swim jig with a swim bait on the back. Now, this is really wonky, but trust me, it works. So it's a Beast Coast Miyagi that my buddy Andrew figured out, trimmed down the belly a little bit, helps streamline it, has no impact on the sail whatsoever. And it's actually a Beast Coast Little Magnum jig, which is a phenomenal like grass kind of punching jig. But I was looking at it and I was like, you know, with the way I want it to swim through the grass, this would be better than a normal swim jig head. Because 100% of the weight is just in the head. There's 2 wire keepers to hold the bait. It's not, you know, a traditional grass jig where if it's a 1/2 ounce jig, the majority of that is in the head, but then a little bit of that comes back for your bait keeper feature. No, 100% in the head on the Little Magnum. So when I'm fishing really, really thick vegetation, I'm finding I like this a little bit better because I can get it to kind of hit the stalks of grass and deflect around a little more easily because all that weight is centered right at the front, right at the head. And there's something about that, especially when they're chasing bluegill this time of the year. This has been, by far and large, my best big bass producing bait. A swim jig with a swim bait on the back.
All right. That's not something you hear very often, to be completely honest with you.
It used to be spinnerbait for a long time. And then that swim jig, swim bait combo took over. And it has been unstoppable up until about 2 years ago. And mostly because I started to get in the habit of retreading a couple of areas, so I think I've just kind of conditioned those fish too much to see the same thing. But when I go to other places I usually don't fish, then we all of a sudden we start getting on them. Yeah. And we were just up on Champlain for 5 days, and this was actually one of our most consistent bites that we had for the first 3 days. And it was slow, but that was working really well because a lot of fish were pushed up there all three phases: pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn. So they were just up there kind of munching in all different ways. You roll over the top of one when it was on a bed and it'd come up and smoke it. But that was rare. We didn't run into too many beds. A lot of pre-spawners. And then we'd go hit like a completely different area and it was all post-spawners. But that's kind of the beauty of that lake. You could drive 10 miles and go from almost 50-degree water to 74-degree water.
Oh, wow.
In one area.
Really?
Yeah.
It just turns over?
Yeah, current. That's the big thing a lot of people don't kind of understand when they first go to Champlain. Current is a significant factor in how you want to tackle that place. And when you go on the New York side, on the northern end, that's the main current flow up there. So keep that in consideration when you go up there because that's going to be where the coldest water is. And understanding where the current pulls in from other sides of the lake coming back into there, you've got some dead slack areas that get a ton of sun over a huge shallow flat, so it warms up stupid fast. It's wild how varied the water temperature can be up there in over really a short area.
See, that's so wow, because I don't fish any lakes that have turnover like that.
Yeah.
Then again, I live in Northeast Ohio. I mean, I could probably get it if I went up to Erie, but yeah, interesting. All right, I got a question here from Andrew Santiago. Sean, do you catch anything on topwater yet? Was smashing them on the buzz a few days ago.
We got close up on Champlain because, dude, there's 97 unique fish species on that lake. And when it comes to smallmouth, smelt, alewife, yellow perch, and then crawfish. But if we're talking about strictly fish species, smelt and alewife are some of their favorite. Yellow perch also come in key, but the different times of the year, they stack up better than others, and they're easier to feast on. So right now, the alewifes are running I saw a school that would have blown your mind. And we were pulled up, and all of a sudden we saw the smallmouth busting on a school. My buddy had a popper ready, fired it over, hit the water, and sploosh, down under it went. And he fought it for a couple of seconds and came unpinned. That's the extent of our topwater success so far. But this whole time I've been trying to fish that pre-spawn bite. And I did go out this past Sunday trying to get a frog bite to work. No bueno. That particular body of water wasn't quite ready. I think it's going to be a different story when I go out this weekend. I bet the top water bite's going to be really, really good.
I just tied on my frog literally today.
Yeah.
And so I think I read somewhere, once you get that dogwood, that cotton crap that gets all over the top of the water, that's when it's time. I forget who I read that by. And I didn't come up with this myself, but someone told me once that is on the water, that's when you know it's time to break out the old frog. So I was like, oh, interesting. Just, I mean, obviously it's not exact science, but that was kind of fun. All right, so walk us through. You got us what's going on kind of right now at the end of May.
Yeah.
So walk me through what goes through your mind. Help everyone listening in. June, July, the next two. Let's just talk about the next 2 months. So how bait's getting on and off your line? What are you thinking about? Where are they heading? Just walk us through the mechanical engineer bass fisherman that you are.
Okay, I will talk for an hour, but you gotta point me in the right direction. Do you want smallmouth or largemouth first, or one or the other? Because
let's let everyone over here decide. What do you guys think? And while they're answering, Smoke 74's got a question for you. Do you guys want to hear more about smallmouth or largemouth? Let me know in the comments. Yeah. While you guys are writing that, Smoke 74 Fishing said, "Hey, what's your favorite frog to use?"
Oh, hang on. I do not want to screw this up. Is it the The Gavacho? What the hell is the name of that?
Gavacho.
No, is it Mega Bass?
Okay.
I'm. Yeah. Sorry, Jackal. The Jackal Gavacho.
Got it. All right.
So what I like about that frog is colors are great. They hold up really, really well. It walks, but it also pops really well. So one frog, I can do anything I want with it. And I really like the color scheme. And they have one that's very bluegill colored. And that's when I really like to throw it, when the bluegill are moving up. Like pretty much as soon as the largemouth starts spawning and for like the next 2 months. That's one of my favorites.
All right. So we got some people chiming in. We got largemouth, smallmouth, largemouth, largemouth, smallmouth, smallmouth. So it's 50-50. You're going to have to split and make it concise. Let's start with largemouth.
Okay.
Really because I'm the host, and that's what I primarily fish, so I guess I get to choose. But feel free to venture off into smallmouth land.
All right, largemouth first. I'm going to tackle it two different ways. It's always going to be a jig. That's always going to be tied on, but it may not always be the first thing I'll go to. I'll go to shaky head because it's a really good way to catch a lot of fish really, really fast. Although rarely do I get a big fish, but at least it helps me kind of point me in the right direction for where I want to be. One of my favorite things to get them on, because at that point, when you're talking kind of that midsummer pattern, you're going to get those really hot bluebird sky days where they push up stupid shallow in the pads. And I'm going to do one of two things, either a frog, or I'm going to tie on my jig rod. I'm going to tie a weightless Texas rig fluke. And I'm going to work it like a soft body jerkbait. It's basically what it is. And it's one of my favorite ways to catch fish. I'll throw it way deep in the pads on 15-pound fluoro, and I'll just crack it all the way through. And it kind of darts in and around, up and over and under on all the pads. And oh my God, it's so much fun. Especially like right now, immediate post-spawn for like the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's the first thing we're going to throw. And then if I can't find them up shallow on either one of those two things, and even a swim jig will come into play, then I'll back off and I'll look for deeper grass lines. I don't do it fun fishing just because I'm not a fan of it, but wacky rig Senko, like you just can't beat it. I will only do that on days where I've been out like 6 hours and I haven't caught anything yet, and I'm just swinging for the fences. I need to make some magic happen. But you better believe I have one tied on every single tournament I'm in. And I've caught multiple fives in tournaments on that stupid thing. So I will have one tied on specifically, especially if I'm going frog fishing. I'm going to have two different ones. I'm going to wacky rig Senko. I'm going to have that Texas rig weightless fluke. Depending on where I get blown up, just follow it right up with that, because I catch those fish almost every single time doing that. And if I can't get anything up shallow with any of that, then I'm going to pull back. I'm going to look for deeper grass lines. And I've got a couple of ponds, some of my favorite places to fish, where the weed lines will be, they'll end like 8 to 10 feet deep. And some other ponds, they can end a lot deeper. And those are fun. Little Magnum jig from Beast Coast with any type of craw trailer, either 3/8 or ½ ounce. Sometimes I'll throw the Flippin' Delight from Beast Coast just on a flipping hook with a ½ ounce weight that's pegged. Sometimes I like to go with it unpegged. And I'll sit there and I'll flip grass all day. I will do that all day. It's one of the most fun things to do. And so now I've got my really shallow and kind of my mid-depth range. And if none of that goes, my other really favorite thing to do is either a like 3/4 ounce football jig, dragging out over close to deep grass or deep rock piles. Like that is seriously some of the most fun midsummer fishing ever.
When you say deep, give us your perspective of deep. How deep do your lakes and ponds get up there?
They vary. So it's relative to what you're doing. Like one pond in particular, the max depth is like 18 feet.
Okay.
But there's 2 rock piles I know of that are like top out at 16 feet. So it's subtle, but it's enough. So for that pond, it's deep. There's a couple other places I really love to fish in Vermont that they have some of the most beautiful deep water grass that's in like 25 feet. And it's not much, it's only 6 inches tall I forget what it's called, eelgrass or something.
Right.
But the yellow perch stack in it. And then all the largemouth just kind of cruise the edges. So like I can see it on my 360 and we'll just sit there and cast all the edges and drag that all around. And if they won't need a jig, then I'll do a Texas rig with like a 1/8 ounce bullet weight on it, 8-inch ribbon tail worm, or I'll throw a Carolina rig with a 10-inch worm.
All right.
And I'll same deal. I'm dragging deep rock piles. I'm dragging deep grass. So I can tackle it in one of 3 ways. And it's funny when we go out there and specifically for largemouth, and we're like midsummer bite, like it's hot. We are well past spawn on everything, and everybody's just kind of. I will have like one side of the deck, all my shallow water stuff for like beating the bank out to 3 feet. And then the other side of the deck is all my rods for deep water stuff. So if I can't get them in inches of water, then I'll go out right to the middle of the lake. I'll find all my deep water structure and I'll go pick that apart.
Do you have any like rules for yourself that like if you find yourself in a spot too long or just throwing a bait a little bit too long, do you have any like mental things that go through your mind? How often are you switching through all the lures and all the setups that you have? Sometimes, because I feel like a lot of times guys get locked in and like, I'm just going to throw this all day until something bites it.
Yeah. When it comes to largemouth, I keep it simple. You really only need like 2, maybe 3 colors. You know, green pumpkin of the black flake, black of the blue flake, something in between. You know, green, orange laminate, like a Bomba Bug color, whatever it's called, depending upon the brand. Those work really, really well, especially in that hotter weather, because all the crawfish tend to get a lot more of that orange color in them. But largemouth, I keep it simple. Smallmouth, totally different animal. My front deck of my boat is a massacre of baits within the first 20 minutes once I hit the water.
Oh, really? You're cutting, retying.
Yeah, and it depends. And this even goes back to before I had active target, my forward-facing sonar on my boat, and just 2D sonar. And I love catching deep water smallies, like 35 feet or deeper. And it was even with just 2D sonar, you don't need forward-facing sonar for this. You can get right over the top of them when they're out, pushed out deeper in that midsummer bite, and just drop a drop shot down on them or Demiki. And if that thing gets within 10 feet of that fish, and all of a sudden they disappear off your sonar, that's the wrong color. I'm gonna reel that back up as fast as I can, and I will literally have my bin of all my baits right there. And I'll grab the next color. And I usually start. Smallmouth, I start with something kind of smelt colored that time of the year because that's typically what they're roaming for when they're in that summer pattern. And then I play with different hues of that same kind of color. And then towards the end of that, I'll go to like just a kind of standard green pumpkin. And, you know, you can watch them. Again, you don't need live sonar. You can just see it on 2D. You can see how they react to it. And they'll just smack it if you've got the right color. But if you got close to the right color for what they're feeling to that mood, then they'll hang around, and as the bait comes down to them, and you can watch them, and they'll sit on it for a little bit, and they'll eventually leave. And it's like, okay, now I'm really close. This one had a lot more blue in it, and like kind of a translucent color underneath, where the first one was pure white. They didn't want that.
How many will you go through in a day,
dude? I won't stop. There's been days where I've gone through like 12 different colors, especially when we're talking like cold water smallmouth, when I'm dropping a Demiki over their head, which is incredible because it's the dumbest thing. You'd be sitting right over the top of them, be down in 45 feet of water, like a foot off the bottom. You're like, yep, there's one. Drop straight down, and you stop 10 feet over the head, and all of a sudden you just see that line come up really, really, really slow, and eventually you see like bait and fish, and then nothing, and you watch your whole rod go, dude, and they're just sitting there, and all they do is they open their mouth and they chomp it. But it's so violent. It's a jarring bite. And they're just sitting there on it. They just open their mouths and scoop it. And it's dumb, but it's fun. Then you lean into it, and the whole rod doesn't move. See, like a 4.5 pound smallmouth.
Get jacked out. You're just telling the story.
Oh, dude. So, yeah, when I'm doing things like that, like drop shot or Demiki and cold water, I will go through literally every color I have to figure out if that's it. And then if that doesn't work, then I'll go into my baits that have hair in them, and I'll try those too. So it's just... it can get ugly fast. In the summer, it's a little bit easier. In the cold water, it's a totally different animal.
You're changing often. You're the reason Beast Coast is doing so well. You and you alone, it sounds like.
Dude, I have like 6 bags of every color bait that they have, including every size. Because then there's the other that aspect too, size, especially coming to smallmouth. Like I should probably start from the beginning with smallmouth, but to finish this thought,
let's switch. Let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's talk smallmouth.
Okay. So to finish that thought, there are times where color is only half of it, and then size is the other half. And there is a dramatic shift where a 3.5 inch kind of Twitch style minnow bait is all you need. And then there's other times where it's like, no, you got to go to a 5 inch. You can have literally everything else right, but it's just too small and they don't want to eat it. But the moment you throw literally the exact same thing, but a 5 inch version, and all of a sudden you're catching fish almost every drop. So for smallmouth, this time of the year right now, they should all be post-spawn. I've always found that smallmouth spawn before largemouth in a lot of cases, Bigger bodies of water, it's kind of harder to pinpoint. But smaller bodies of water, smallies, largies around their heel, and then everybody moves to post spawn. Smallmouth will hang around kind of not really super shallow in a lot of cases, but fairly often enough. But they tend to go towards that mid depth range, like that 5 to 15 foot range for bodies of water that, you can get like 40 feet deep, and where you would typically find a lot of smallmouth anyway, unless like it's a river system. And they want to move to that mid-depth range a lot faster. There'll be days you can catch them up shallower, but the bigger fish, 5 to 15 feet, immediately post-spawn. And they're still heavy on whatever they can get their hands on. And a lot of that tends to be crawfish. So tube, jig, Ned rig, like those are my go-tos for immediate post-spawn on smallmouth. And I keep it really simple, like dark green pumpkin. And every once in a while, you could do something that's a little bit more brown than it is green. Sometimes really weird colors, like I'd like a smoke gray color that's almost like translucent with a black and purple flake. I have no idea why that color works so well, but some of my biggest smallmouth have come on that dumb combo. So, and spider jig, which twin-tailed hula grub on a football jig. Like that will catch you largemouth and smallmouth, ice out to ice in, wherever you go. I don't care where you go. That's like one of the best things to throw for bass. It's dumb. And you only need 3 colors.
The hula grub is what you're talking about?
Yep, twin-tailed hula grub on a football jig. And it doesn't really matter what you throw for a football jig. I usually throw 3/8. I just make sure the hook shank is long enough that the bend coming up to hook point comes out right in between the legs. Because that way your hookup ratio is just stupid good. But like you can throw those 4 things, jig, Ned rig, tube, spider jig. You can start throwing a drop shot. Drop shot I find to be very consistent once they're truly post-spawn for smallmouth. Then you get into the warmer months, middle of summer, and all they're going to do is just keep pushing out deeper. And they will reach a point where in bigger, deeper bodies of water, like anywhere in the lakes region of New Hampshire, all the big lakes up there, they get to like 180 feet to 200 feet. So all those fish, there's a couple of ponds, like Newfound Lake, phenomenal. Tons of structure all the way down to like 40 feet. And then once you hit 40 feet, you kind of don't really find that much more structure. It just becomes either like straight ledge or just like clean sand. But you can follow the fish all the way down the contour, and they're hugging bottom, and they're right about 35 feet. Surface temp gets like 80 consistently, and they just come off the bottom and swim straight out to the middle of the lake. And they become pelagic, the vast majority of them. And they're just roaming around, eating whatever is most bountiful in that body of water. Newfound, again, smelt, yellow perch, those are real heavy hitters. You go down to like Candlewood down in Connecticut, and huge on alewife. So you just, from there, like I'm trying to key in on those 2 colors. If I'm confident it's going to be a drop shot, I'll have 2 setups. And one's going to be strictly smelt-related color, and the other one's going to be much more yellow perchy-related color.
Yeah. You got No Name coming in and say, I have no confidence with soft plastic, so this is awesome info. Right on.
You're welcome.
How much thought do you give to trailers? Now, you talk color, you talk size, and I just picked up their Beast Coast discontinued Marauder.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts? What's your thought on that? I got it hooked up on a few of my jigs.
The thing I've found, action is everything, but it's not as important as
on those things.
Oh yeah,
on the Marauders.
The action isn't as important as the profile. I'm finding much more often.
Okay,
and there are some exceptions to that. Really cold water, I want almost no action, but I want the appendages to stay straight. A little action is still okay. And it depends. They're like, man, dude, cold water bites really hard to figure out. Because some days they want the tiniest little thing you can give them. And then there's days where like, no, I want a meal. And my buddy made a really good example one day. Like middle of winter, you're sitting in your living room, you're freezing your butt off, but you're starving. And you got nothing in your house. And you look down the end of your driveway, there's a guy holding a bag of chips. Are you going to get up? Maybe, maybe not. Now that another guy shows up at the end of your driveway with a large pizza, you're going to get up. So two different ways to think about it. And some days they just don't want that pizza. They're eating light, but some days that you got to feed them large pizza. So, but it's weird. A lot of action in cold water can tend to throw those fish off because it's extremely unnatural. A crawfish pattern is really unnatural in cold water anyway because they're dormant. They go to ground. But I don't think bass are that smart. They see something that they know they eat all the time. Might not be the right time of the year. It doesn't matter. It's like, hey, I eat that thing almost all year long. That looks right.
And it's
but
super
if it's falling
right in front of my face.
Right. But if you got something, say, like the Rage Crawl from Strike King, that's a lot of action. As it's falling, it's making a whole hell of a lot of noise and disturbance. Now it's like completely unnatural because even though the fish move around a lot, they don't quite move like that.
Right.
So colder water, I tend to go with a much more dead action on the legs, but I want them to be straight. So when it hits the bottom, they stand, they present. So it's an easy target for the fish to find. Middle of the summer, doesn't matter. I want something really, really wild. Flippin' Delight from Beast Coast, which is awesome. You can use it all year long. Rage Craw from Strike King, like anything wild like that. Yum Speed Craw, the Christie Craw, like those are all great. If I know the fish are really keyed in on bait fish, I'll throw a swim bait, whether it's a slow flow from Beast Coast Fishing or just a Kitech. I'll throw it in the back of my jigs. And it's wild how often you can make that work at times of the year that you wouldn't think it would. Like cold water is a killer. I'm always going with a bait fish profile with a swim bait on the back.
Right.
But in the warm water, it tends to be much more craw related. But even in the dead of summer, there's some days that almost everybody's throwing a craw trailer. So you want to do something a little different. You throw like a 3.3 or 3.8 Kitech on the back, and it's just it still looks good on the fall. And when it stands, especially in a football jig, that tail's standing up, so it just looks like a little bait fish swimming along the bottom instead of crawfish. Just looks like a bait fish just sitting there munching on whatever he's eating at the bottom.
I've never really thought of putting a little swim bait trailer in the back of my jig. Just
works
never
killer.
really crossed my mind. Now
Works killer.
Makes sense in cold weather because they were actually, oh man, they were smashing my mag draft this year, especially in March, April. I was getting my biggest fish off that. I was like, maybe next year I'll be picking up some, putting the swim baits on the jigs. All right. Noted. I will remember that. I got some questions here for you. Hooking Bass Up North has a question for you, Sean. He says, will largies use the same beds as smallies?
Not that I've seen. I wouldn't put it against it, but I don't know. It's weird. Every time I run into beds on bodies of water that all have like really good mixed bags, they always seem to kind of pick their own spots.
Yeah. No, I don't have a scientific answer for you either. So interesting. Yeah. Jake, the fishing guy. Scent? No scent? Do you believe in scent? What do you got there? Cold weather, warm weather, make a difference for you?
It can't hurt to use it. I have only experienced a couple of times where it literally made the difference. So I absolutely think it can help at times, but I also think it's so rare that it's not necessary. It certainly cannot hurt to have it. But if you don't have it, don't feel like you're missing out on it because it's like anything. There's outliers to literally every situation, scenario you can think of. And there have been a few outliers where scent made all the difference in the world. Kind of going along that same line, talking to Jimmy Reese, pro angler. He's on the Douglas Rods team with me. I met him at ICAST last year. We're talking about rod action for jackhammers. He's like, dude, you use way too heavy of a rod. You get way more action on a softer tip. I was like, I'm not going to say you're wrong because Jesus Christ, you're way better fisherman than I am.
Right.
I just haven't experienced a situation that would prove you right or prove me wrong.
Right.
Until this last weekend at Champlain. My buddy was up 10 fish to me over my goose egg.
Oh, that's maddening.
And we were throwing the same exact thing. And I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to try my jig rod because it's a lot softer than the rod I'm using right now. First cast I hooked up. Second cast I hooked up. Fourth cast I hooked up. I was like, holy shit. I found the outlier.
That minute of a change.
Yeah, just that's literally all it was just a
little bit more action.
It basically going from like a fast to a moderate fast. Not quite that aggressive, but along those lines, like just stepping down to a softer tip. And that was literally the difference.
They are so freaking fickle, right? To dial it's amazing that we actually ever catch anything.
Yeah,
with how fickle they are. Oh, it's crazy. So do you use any type of technology, like apps wise, to help you dial in the weather or, all that stuff? Or...
Actually, yeah, only a couple. Weather is kind of a crapshoot here in the greater Northeast. Like, if you want to know what the weather's going to be tomorrow, then ask me in 2 days. Because that's the only way you're going to get an accurate assessment. Our weather up here is just so hard to pinpoint.
Right.
Unless you've got, like, consecutive days of really nice weather. And then it's like, okay, then we can count on that. Especially this time of the year. Earlier in the year, total crapshoot. But Wind Finder has been my best friend for understanding wind. Yep. Okay. Great app. And it's cool because... you can, there's a couple of different pages inside of that app, but there's one that's just like a map, an overview, and it will show you wind direction and speeds I think every 3 to 4 hour intervals. And it was better when I first installed it because I think they give you like the first, I don't know, 60 or 90 days where it's like
free,
this kind of premium version.
Juice. Yep.
So I could go back and look at a couple days in the past, but then see out like a week, which is, again, up here, total crapshoot. Like 2 or 3 days max, you can kind of bank on it. Beyond that, I wouldn't put my money on it. That has been the best app, though. And it's been really helpful for me to understand where I can and cannot go. Now I got a bigger boat. It's not as much of a worry, but even still, like I'm going to Champlain, Lake Winnipesaukee, any of those really big lakes. I don't care how big of a boat you have. You still need to know what the wind's going to do because you'll get 4 or 5 foot waves out there in a hurry if you go on a really bad wind day. If the wind's running right up, true north, true south on Champlain, out of the northwest or out of the southeast on Lake Winnipesaukee, like, dude, it'll sink you if you're not paying attention. So, like, wind is by far my most important thing I need to keep an eye on, and Wind Finder has been the best for that. Other than that, Weather Underground or Weather Bug for my just normal weather, either one of those, like they both have been consistently inconsistent. I don't find one to be better than the other.
Okay. That's it?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not really big on any other apps. I'm actually a terrible social media angler from that perspective. Like I don't do FishBrain or Bass Forecast or anything like that.
Right.
Nothing can replace time on the water. Mm-hmm. And if you put in more time on the water, then you don't need to look at any of that, in my opinion. And it's cool. Like, it can be helpful, especially if you can only get out so often. It can help kind of paint a little bit of a clearer image, but you have to be careful with some things. Like FishBrain, dude, everybody can lie on that. I stopped using it because I kind of felt bad because I was lying about my fish location every time.
Right.
I'm not giving up my 100%. honey holes.
No,
and I was
absolutely not.
What? I'm not going to do this. It's just wrong. Literally every fish I caught was either
caught on the bank, 10 miles in.
The middle of Lake Champlain, the middle of Lake Winnipesaukee in like 200 feet, or I'd pick a random swamp in the middle of the woods. I was like, okay, I feel bad. I'm going to stop doing this.
It's interesting. I was with my buddy. We were fishing a lake this past Saturday. And he's like, I'm 10-1 on bass. And he's like, I don't understand. Right. I'm literally throwing the same exact thing that you are. And he thinks the same places, but you're at 10-1 on bass. Like, why? I was like, it's time on the water. It's all the smallest nuances, right? 100%. He thinks he's throwing in the same place. I'm actually skipping it into the hole that is a softball size. Yep. And he's throwing it 5 feet off. It's like, you think it's the same, it's not. And so it's just interesting. It's fascinating in that way.
Oh yeah.
All right. If you guys haven't done so, I can't believe it. We're almost 55 minutes in. We had 41 people on live right now. This is probably going to 1,000
call to action
on live. I know, right? Hit that like button. Help me out. Help us get a little bit more play on YouTube. But let's keep this party started. Usually we're gonna switch over to like the fun. I mean, it's all fun. Don't get me wrong. I do a little game called Overrated, Underrated. Some are fishing related, some are not. And so it's always a great way. It's usually how I finish out. All right. So I want everybody listening in as well to let me know underrated, overrated, and why. We will start with underrated, overrated, Twitter. Well, I guess now X.
Oh, overrated. I tell you what, if you're into gaming, it's underrated.
Okay.
Fishing, it's overrated.
Okay.
I don't understand it. It could just be me. I've seen pretty similar results from other friends that do the same thing that I did. You and I do. I don't know. Twitter was phenomenal for us for the gaming world, but fishing world, no.
I mean, couldn't get any other world. I've never seen. But interesting. You got a background in the gaming world. Is it live streams? What is it?
I don't know. I think it's just gaming is kind of political in a sense. It's not political, but the conversations that happen around it tend to be have the same kind of argumentative, I don't know how else to put this, as you would find with people that discuss politics. And I'm not big into politics whatsoever, which is why I got burned out on gaming, because people talk about gaming the way they talk about politics, where it's like, I have my line of thinking and anything else you say is wrong. And that's kind of like the vast majority of every experience I've ever had in both those realms, which is why I step away from it, because I choose to be a very open-minded person. And like, I don't know, Twitter's always just been big with politics, and gaming is kind of along those same lines for how people discuss any aspect of it. So I don't know, to me, like, I remember drawing that parallel several years ago, and I was like, holy shit, they're like one and the same, the way people talk about it. Huh? So they kind of know, like, that environment is just conducive to those two things.
Yeah. Jake the fishing guy, overrated. Hooking bass up north, overrated. Smoke 74, way over. Alec Plot, polarizing. I despise Twitter. I don't. It's the one platform I don't even use. I don't even spend time on it because it's a waste of time for content creators around fishing. All right, overrated, underrated. Question number 2. This one is going to be, it's fishing related. Lure retrievers. Do you carry them on your boat?
No, I don't.
Well, no,
that's a lie.
Sounds like you'll be okay with all the jigs and lures that you have.
Dude, I have 7 Plano 3700s just for jigs.
Jigs.
I'm good on jigs. I do have some. I would say they're underrated, and because, man, there's several different kinds of lure retrievers you can do, and I made one like, oh my god, first year we went up to St. Lawrence, the water was at record high. We had a bunch of lead drop shot weights made. And now I'm stuck with a friggin' like 50 more 1 ounce drop shot weights. I'm like, what the hell do I do with these? We get those vinyl coated paper clips, throw it on that drop shot weight, and it's a lure knocker. So it's like, honestly, and like, if it doesn't come back, I don't care, because I paid like 5 cents a piece for these drop shot weights.
Right.
And then the vinyl coated paper clip goes on super easy, and it doesn't scuff up your line whatsoever. And I've gotten a ton of jigs back from dropping those down.
Yeah.
But like those big janky looking things that have like chains hanging off from everywhere. I don't know, because I've never used one. I've seen some guys talk about them that work well for like the big swim bait guys. And thankfully, me and my buddy Andrew have not lost any big swim baits. He almost lost a $200 depths 250, but it landed at 8 feet of water, and I was able to reach it with my swim bait rod. So that was okay. Those I would say are maybe a little overrated. A lot of guys just go get a big magnet instead. But those little, kind of like knockers, little friggin', like however you want to make them, those are awesome. I think those are underrated. Not many people use them, I feel like.
No, they don't. I have one, and it literally paid for itself. I got my 10-inch mag draft caught up. And of course, you get it caught up just below as far as you can put your pole. So 8.5 feet is usually where you get those things caught up. And it's amazing how well they work. You just kind of wrap it around, just throw it down, and pop. You're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
It's impressive, because also this past week, when you start shoving your pole down there, those ceramic inserts in your tip are extremely brittle, which I just broke once. I had to do a rod replacement. So save yourself some time and some money. Just buy yourself a stupid $4 lure retriever. Keep it on your kayak or boat. And because, man, I have saved so much money.
You're actually reminding me I need to make more of these, because I ran out. Like I said, sometimes you don't get them back, depending on where you fish. New Hampshire is known as the granite state. We have a lot of granite everywhere, and it's a very rugged rock. You're going to get hung up on it. You go to Vermont, it's like a lot of ledge and shale. That's even worse. It's just nothing but straight, sharp, jagged edges. And I've lost more in Vermont in the last year than I've lost in New Hampshire in the last 5 years. So, you drop like 3 of those knockers down. It's like, okay, never mind. It's just
you go 3 in. All right.
It depends. If it's an open water sniper and I'm running really low on inventory, then I'm going to do everything I can.
Yeah, I'll throw 15 down to save a lure. Cost like that. Oh my gosh. All right. Let me see here. Bart Foster. I need to get one for crankbaits. Bassin with Big Malone. They work. Smoke 74. Never tried them. I don't have one. Bucktail, massively overrated. All right.
Saw that.
Going a little different there. Overrated. I use a $25 lure retriever just to use it on a $4 lure, and I lost it.
Holy hell.
You lost
Get yourself
your lure
some cheap
retriever?
lead weights with the paper clips, man.
I mean, mine is maybe 4 inches long, right? I didn't buy the ones that have the chains and all that crazy stuff on there. Greg said, good idea with a paper clip, right on. Hooking bass up north said, got tired of wasting money on new jackhammers, so got the lure retriever. Bucktail, never lost a jackhammer recently. Yeah, so I don't know, guys. I don't know. We'll see. Underrated, overrated. Arby's.
Dude, I don't think I've ever actually eaten there. I'm trying to think. If I did,
Oh,
it
you
would have been when I was
kidding
a
me?
teenager at the mall.
What?
So now I'm starting to date myself.
Like 5 for 5 days. That's when you were eating Arby's.
Listen, when you have the stomach issues I've had all my life, you tend to avoid questionable destinations.
That question is so delicious. Their French dip. This is what I always get every single time. French dip with 8 jalapeno poppers.
Oh,
So
okay,
freaking delicious. See, your stomach just churned over, but
oh yeah,
I'm
dude.
still.
No, I got to plan ahead for something like that. That I know I'm like I can't do anything for the first 6 hours of the next day.
All right. Let me see. Okay, we got overrated, underrated with the coupons. Jake the fishing guy. There we go. Underrated. Love Arby's. But gives me bad heartburn every single time. And Steve just likes putting in his order. Chicken bacon Swiss over here. Low life fresh market sandwiches. Michigan Outdoors, but I'm with you. He says, I remember going fishing with my dad and getting us the 5 for 5. The 5 roast beef sandwiches for $5. Man, those were the freaking days. That takes me back about 30 years. My goodness.
Oh,
so
yeah.
good. All right, I got one more for you. Underrated, overrated. I have a feeling I'm going to know the answer to this one. Tournament fishing. Maybe I don't.
This one's tough.
Yeah.
It depends.
Okay. Give us
really depends.
both. Give me both angles for you.
Small club tournaments, hella overrated.
Okay.
Bigger single day events, underrated.
Okay, walk us through it.
Then there's been plenty of days where it's been vice versa. It all depends on the people you fish with. Because I fished in a mixed bag of club level tournaments, $100 and you're fishing for $300. The money's whatever. To me, it's all about what you can learn. And I fished a couple of clubs that, dude, those guys treated me like I was a leper. And I fished with some clubs where guys just really wanted to talk and share. And it's always so polarizing at the local level. And it really turned me off on the scene when I was trying to learn. And I didn't understand when I was younger. I understand it several years later that, a lot of those guys just don't want to tell you anything because they worked hard to learn what they did learn. And I totally get that. But God, you don't have to be a dick about it. And a lot of those guys were. They just had like a really, really terrible attitude, and it was not a welcoming environment. And then there's been other clubs I fish with. Those guys are great, and they're never going to give you your secrets, and I would never expect anybody to do that. But at least throw you something, it has nothing to do with them as an angler. It has everything to do with them as a person. And there's plenty of tournaments where people are just good people, and they're smart. They recognize the newcomer and what kind of newcomer is he. Nope, that dude's a hammer. He's just looking for a new club, and cool. Well, hey, welcome aboard, man, and best of luck to everybody. And then they also see someone like me when I first got started. God damn, that guy doesn't know shit, but he really wants to learn. So I'm going to throw him a bone because he just seems like a nice, friendly person. And those have been great. And then there's the big tournaments, and thus far I would say those are kind of underrated. And that is because of the money side. And not what you can win, but what you spend. When I was getting back into the tournaments now, because my kids are now 11 and 7, everything with my career is going well. I'm in a good spot financially. I got time. It's easier with the family. I'm like, okay, now I can do tournaments. Initially, I thought, well, I'll do a club thing. You do 12 events at $125 a pop, it adds up, $1,400, $1,500, $1,600, whatever. And now I'm locked in 10 to 12 events for the year. Okay, that's 20 to 24 weeks. I've got a pre-fish and the tournament, and I have to follow the schedule. Right. Or I could go fish 2 BFLs, and that's $300 a pop. Now, $300 in one shot sucks, but if I do that 3 times, that's $900 versus the $1,400.
Right.
I've got 3 lakes, so I can go pre-fish those 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it's only 3 tournaments, I go pre-fish those 3 times. 4 days per tournament times the 3 is 12. I'm still spending less time overall and less money overall to do those 3 bigger tournaments than I would be chasing the $100 buy-ins 10, 12 times a year.
Sure.
And it's much more meaningful because I have more time to dedicate to one event. So that is the biggest reason why I think those bigger tournaments are underrated, because to me, in my opinion, they provide much more better value for learning and testing yourself. And it's one of those, yeah, it'd be cool if I could find a club tournament that guys were like dead set on no pre-fishing for like 2 weeks. I will bet against anybody else if I go into a tournament blind, because I know that's what I excel at, is breaking down a pattern really fast.
Right.
But, going up against guys that have fished the same freaking pond for the last 35 years that are out there 3-4 times a week because they're self-employed, like I don't stand a chance against that 9 times out of 10.
No, they're got their milk run. Right.
You're setting aside more time, so at least you have a better chance. And again, for me, I learn more. Because now it's like I have time to really dissect this, and this is all I'm going to do for 3 or 4 days. I'm just going to work on whatever is given to me in this moment and try and put it all together at that last day.
Yeah.
And I'm saving time and money in the end. So, underrated.
All right. I like it. Got all kinds of comments over here. Overrated most of the time, but once in a while, well, that's talking about a roast beef sandwich. Oh my goodness. I'm reading the wrong. He's still talking about Arby's.
You're too far up.
Oh, so good. Bucktails like over here. I can't get Arby's out my mind, folks. Come on. I love it. A lot of people fishing the knuckleheads, so they're making some comments around that. Kayak tournament fishing seems to be doing better each year. That's kind of our world. You ever gone kayak fishing?
No, actually. Have I? I think one time.
Okay. Do you like it?
So, and only because I blew out my back when I was younger. I'm 6'2", and I've got like nothing left for discs in my lower back. Up until recently, I've been seeing a chiropractor once a week for years.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So for me to be in anything that I have to sit with my knees, when my knees are up, I have to be in a tall seat in a kayak to be comfortable to sit like that all day. But I need to be able to move around. That's the biggest thing. I have to be mobile. So I don't even put the front seat on my bass boat, so I can literally walk around. I don't stand still at all. I put on good shoes, or I've got really good sandals that my chiropractor recommended, because I have giant feet with a high arch, which sucks even more with the lower back injury. So I have nothing against it. It's just, but because of that, I get super uncomfortable really quick. Like even being in a John boat is tough for me. I have to be able to move around. I have to be able to mix between sitting and standing and walking.
Yeah. Well, Sean, you are a plethora of information. And man, I got to have you back on sometime. It's not just you, right? I saw 4 faces on your YouTube channel.
Right. It's my buddy Andrew and I. And Andrew fishes with me pretty much almost every weekend.
Okay.
But as far as like everything for the channel and the content goes, I do it all. I make the videos. Like he comes fishing with me, helps me set up, but I do everything. And then for our live shows that we do, we try to mix in guests here and there. And we get Tim Doobie, he's a New Hampshire guy. He's on the Elites, and we've been trying to make him like a recurring guest. So his face pops up every once in a while. But nope, just Andrew and I pretty much for the time being. But Andrew's actually moving to Florida at the end of the year. So
oh no, you're losing your buddy.
Yeah, it's
hard to replace a fishing buddy, especially if you guys fish so much. You're just like each other's next movement. It's gonna be
pretty
tough.
much like that. When we fish in a team tournament, we're deadly because we understand each other really well, and we can both do everything. We have our preferences versus strengths and weaknesses. It's what we prefer to do. We have at this point, because I've worked my butt off to get to this point where I don't feel like I have a single weakness in any technique, period. If I need to pick up something specific, I can do it. Right. And Andrew's the exact same way. But our preferences are very varied. So it's awesome. Because when we go into a tournament and we're trying to figure out what the bite's going to be, we just fish our preferences to start. And the moment we figure out whatever that pattern is, not a problem. We both, one of the two of us drops what we're doing, we pick that up, and we hammer it the rest of the day. Yep. So it just works. But I'm fortunate I have another friend that him and I, he's essentially just like Andrew. Got it. So, but our preferences are even like greatly varied. And a lot of that comes down to not just techniques, but also the speed at which we fish. So like he has like another added element to how we can really benefit one another.
Okay.
So,
Well, one last question is for you. What to expect? Because a lot of your live shows are actually just you guys out on the water fishing, right? You go live.
No, it's a lot of this. I'm sitting right here
Oh, is it?
behind this.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
couple that I clicked. I just happened to get some that you were actually, or maybe I looked at a few. Maybe it was doing B footage of you talking about something. I don't know.
Yeah.
You guys have like 150 episodes.
Yeah, we've been oh Jesus, when did we start this? It was January of 2022. And
Okay.
you know, we miss shows here and there for various reasons, and life gets hectic. So we try to do it weekly, but it's almost every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, and it's a lot of what you're doing. You know, it's taking in a lot of questions. We don't try to do a ton of interviews because all like the regular fishing videos are it's kind of raw but kind of polished, like basically breaking down the pattern every time we go and showing
Right.
a lot of fish catches and just showing the natural progression of the breakdown and the conversations that we have that lead to finding out what the pattern is for the day. And then we'll stop and like kind of really touch on like some key points or some not so good key points that led us to where we are at that point in the day, whether it's really good or really bad, like how we may pivot or like, damn, this is working really well. But then the lives allow us to really dive into what we did like tonight, you know, like pick a topic, and I'll talk about that for an hour and a half because I put in so much time to understand it. And then we every once in a while we do an open topic night because people have questions, like you see it all the time. There's tons of questions that may not specifically fit into the topic at hand for the night. So just do random open topic nights so people can ask us whatever the hell they want. And there's no rhyme or reason to it, but it's great.
No, it is great. I love it. Well, if you have not yet done so, head over to Real Northern Bass, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all of those, right? I named all three. I named the three I see in the back. I named the four I see in the background.
The only thing
right
that's
there.
missing from there is Spotify, but my buddies help me do the uploads because I'm just strapped for time, and it's a little behind. But all these things are pretty up to date.
It's a pain in the butt. I'll spend the next hour after I get off the show editing the podcast.
Yep, I hear you.
By the way. And so it's wild. All right, folks. Thank you so much. We got Michael over here. Really appreciate his information. I'm new to bass fishing, other fishing before now, and all from the bank. So this is great. 100%, man. Glad that you found value in this. Yeah. So, Sean, we'll have to have you on again, maybe in a few months, maybe in the fall.
Anytime.
Have you back in the fall. We'll talk about some fall fishing.
Oh, one of my favorite times of the year.
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah. All right. Well, next week I am off, and the following week I got Double T Fishing on here down from Texas. Man, he really excels in electronics and reading your fish finders. For those who struggle with fish finders, you're not going to want to miss in 2 weeks, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on the Kayak Fishing Obsessed podcast. Sean, thank you so much for your time.
Dude,
you all have a great night.